Now we talk a lot about Perl. It's mostly about web development, so you can still leave. So we talk about dancing with disabilities, and it's mostly about how do we develop in such a way for the web that it works for as many people as possible. So, I'm Joop van Achterberg, Joe. On 40 meters lower sideband modulation ham radio, I'm Papa Delta 5 Juliet Oscar Bravo. On Twitter, I'm Dead Knight. I'm a freelance software developer. One of the projects I work on is Ovid's text-based, massive multiplayer online role-playing game with the science fiction theme, Tower Station. Go check it out, it's awesome. I'm a firefighter, so I get cats out of trees and make old ladies cross the street safely. But today I'm here to talk about inclusive design. It's also called universal design. And what is it? So here's a real-world example. This is a photo of a stairway with a ramp next to it. And this ramp is great because people in wheelchairs can get where they need to be. I'm Dutch, I have like 5 bikes, I can get them up the ramp. You can push a baby in a stroller up the ramp, and old people with walkers, they can also get up the ramp. And people who prefer stairs and can use stairs can also get there. And you know, for the Austrian people, you could also, you know, I'm not saying you should, but you could maybe snowboard. So there are various ways to approach this. There are very artistic ones that are kind of dangerous because if you missteer, you might really hurt yourself. And there are ones that, I don't know, this is a ramp that just simply ends. And some of them have deadlocks, so you have to ask inside for the ramp, what if you can get into there too? Anyway, so overall though, this is sort of bolted on. It's like, okay, walkies left, wheelies right, and it's not really inclusive. It feels like we should think about this in a different way. So I like Dutch pedestrian traffic lights because I can hear them and see them and I can feel them. There's a big button, there's, they make noises, they tick, tick, tick when you're waiting, and when you can go, they and you can also see them, so they have shapes and colors, so if you are colorblind, you can distinguish between the red and the green very easily. The shape will also tell you whether you can walk or not. So this was thought through very well. And I had to get used to the ones here, because I kept thinking that that was a button, but it's not. You can't influence whether it turns green, it just eventually will turn green. So they do say in Braille, these Austrian traffic lights, they describe the road. So this one says, okay, I have a couple of roads going in different directions, and I have a bicycling path. And it turns out somebody had to tell me, there's a button on the bottom, and if you click it, then it will make a new noise when it goes green. I didn't know, I kept waiting for, I was on my cell phone, okay, maybe I'll eventually hear it, and it just never happened. So, but in general, the idea is that just make it usable, and if you make it usable, it will generally also then be accessible to everybody, within reasonable constraints. Because some stuff, there's, you know, a guy who's blind in the car with a cane, and I'm kind of describing photos of people who are only listening to me know what I'm having on my slides. So, how does this apply to the web? So I'd like to quote some web developer who said that, on the contrary, I think that's the wrong quote, he did not say that. He said this: the power of the web is in its universality, regardless by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. And the universality in that sentence is kind of the key point. Anyone should be able to use the web. So how do we make sure that anyone can use the web? How do we make it inclusive? How do we make it accessible? And there's a way. There's a way to do that. And WAY stands for Web Accessibility Initiative. And that's a standards body. It's part of the W3C, which is chaired by Tim Berners-Lee himself. And it's basically a set of guidelines that tell you how do I create accessible web content. And they also create a spec, which is by now part of the HTML5 spec as we know it. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Okay, all good? Great. So, one thing they make is the WCAG. That stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And that's basically a whole document that says if you're trying to accomplish, if you're trying to make your content accessible, you need to think about how you present it, how it can be changed by the user, how it's configurable. So they go by 4 principles of A1YY, where A1YY is like I-18N, a numeronym for accessibility, and it stands for perceivable. Can you see it? Is this all easy to read? Can I change the font size? Is the font clearly readable? Is it operable? Can I use it within constraints? Are the links going to places? Are the buttons performing actions? Is it easy to use? Can I get to everything on any device? Is it understandable? Is the interface clear? Or are there a bunch of icons that I have no idea what they mean because they weren't labeled, for instance? How clearly understandable is the interface? How easily is the user confused by it? Is it robust? So, for instance, if you have a day picker, can you use a little calendar day picker, or can you also enter a date manually? Are there more than one way to do it, which you should like to hear? So, in general, that stands for POUR. So, good design is poor design, which means you should make poor decisions. So, accessibility, and the Y makes ARIA as well. So they make WCAG and they make ARIA, and ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. And basically what that means is, if you're building HTML, and your HTML carries semantics, for instance, a button is a button, a link is a link. This tells you something about the content of the page. What does this mean? And in some cases, you sometimes want to present information to the user that you can't through native semantics. For instance, here's an H2, and it's the title for a story, and the story is Undead Perl. Heading as we're used to. So then there's a button, and the button can expand or collapse the story. So okay, read more. Read this article. Read more is terrible, by the way. Don't do that. It's anti-pattern. But in general, this says there's a div that's hidden by CSS somehow, and if you click the button, there's some JavaScript handler that fires, that either expands or collapses or hides or shows that content. And you can say, okay, so whatever the button controls is expanded, either true or false, it's shown or not, and it controls something else. And that story that you see there, that refers to the ID of whatever that button controls. So this is a way that you can add semantics to how does this page work. And this is very important when it comes to how different devices than browsers interpret your content. More on that later. So, there are native roles, like I said earlier, there's a button. So what kind of native role do you think a button has? It's a button. Okay, so what native role does an anchor have? It's a link. Now what about a div? Doesn't have one. Just a separation element. It's just a container. But now, if I give it a role of link, it's a link. Please don't do this, because it's not a link. I can't open it in a new tab. And I can't hover over it and see the URL on my toolbar. But you can say, oh, that's actually something, this should present itself to anything interpreting this as this. So that's how we have these interesting drop-downs, like select boxes like the Dojo toolkit has, that look the same everywhere, but they're actually a bunch of divs and spans that just behave as their select box. And those have problems, but more on that later. First, there's a demo, and here's a beautiful picture of blind ballet dancers. So I gotta switch a bit and start mirroring my screen, that's always fun. Awesome. Cool. Okay, so as an example, we're going to make something slowly more accessible. So this is, we can't see any of this, can we? So projectors, they're often a lot brighter than you think they are. So now we can't see this because the contrast is bad. So, yeah, there's actually a to-do app here. Oh boy, this is beautiful. Let's see. Let's see if we can fix that a bit. No, I don't have time for any of this. I don't have time for this. So, I would have to tweak the contrast on this, the projector. Anyway, this is the To-Do app. This is from To-Do MVC. That's a website on GitHub, and you can ask for any type of framework like React or Backbone or Angular or Angular 2. You can say, okay, how do you implement a To-Do MVC in this framework? And I took vanilla.js, and so I made a little dancer application, and I'm going to go through a series of diffs to show that little changes improve accessibility a lot. There, at some point, will be diffs that are a lot of code. Don't try to follow them too much, because it's just going to be a lot of code. I will mainly just try to illustrate what I did. It's just readable to everybody. Should I increase the font size?
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome, responsive design. Okay, so the first one is, this is the base version. Now, we can't see it, but there's a heading there that says to-dos. So, here in the div, you can see, okay, change the color a bit. We remove the opacity of the H1 in the to-do app. So what that does is, alright, so we can see it, everybody can see it, just with this tiny change. And why was it so hard to see to begin with? Even if the projector was higher contrasted, this would still be hard to see. So we can go to the other change. So this was perceivable. So we're still following the WCAG, perceivable, operable, understandable, and we're just going to go through all the parts. So the next one would be increase the footer paragraph contrast and the font size. Yes, we can't see this, but there's a little footer in the bottom here. I mean, it's even hard to see on my monitor, but there is one. Really, there is. Is there a, where's the top? Here is a little footer. So I changed the color and the font size to make it nice and black. And it didn't refresh, even though I changed my caching settings. Theo, how do I?
That's not my problem.
Okay, cool. There's the footer. I should probably keep moving. So, next one. Increase input placeholder contrast. So there's a placeholder in the input that says what needs to be done. And it's hard to see. So we just basically changed the color there and made also work for Microsoft browsers. And these are all very specific browser styles, but it works when it's supported. So we now also see, oh, there's a placeholder there. Great. These are all just small changes that deal with contrast, but contrast makes such a huge difference to make stuff easy to see. Why would you want to make stuff hard to see? Isn't that what the whole interface is about, to be understood? So, there's also, I wish I could change the contrast on this thing, but I can say I was looking for that earlier, but I wasn't sure where.
It's just in accessibility, there's increased contrast.
There is, and I was trying to find them earlier, but I. Yeah, that's why. Oh no, it took me to voiceover. That's not what I want. Ugh. Yeah, I need to be in the here. Okay. Yeah, I was here like last week, and so yeah, I tried this last time. So this is this does sort of work, but. So there is I need to figure out how to turn it off again. There's a keyboard shortcut for it. So I just need to keep moving. Clearly indicate the checkbox. There's a checkbox here.
Obviously.
And I will just add okay. There's a checkbox. And it's hard to see even now. So, yeah, it is right there, and it is also here, but even now it's hard to see with this projector. Yeah, there it is. So, it's also an SVG, because, yeah, who wants to use normal checkbox? No, we need to use SVG. I don't know, I didn't build this thing, so this is SVGs. So I just made sure that the colors are a bit different by editing the SVG. So, next one. Strong contrast for the completed checkbox. So here we can't see whether it's completed or not, so let's complete it. You can sort of see it now, we just don't know what we completed. And also probably juist. There we are. So I can't see the text, but I know that whatever I checked is now available. Yeah. So, footer information and filter control contrast. So there's a bunch of filters on the bottom that you can use to say, okay, I want to see only the active items, I want to see all the completed items, or just everything. And all I did was just change the border colors and background colors a bit. So we went from here, where you can kind of see them here on the bottom, all active and completed. And I just made them a bit more visible. Next up, completed task contrast. I'm going to see if I can... No, wrong settings. Yeah. So will that fix anything for the default one? No, not really. No. Seems to be made mostly just UI. Okay. Well, I did what I could. So where were we? Task removal contrast button. Okay, because you can remove tasks. And I just upped the contrast on it a bit. So, does anyone see the remove task button? No, it's right here, if you hover. because we don't have users in cell phones where you can't hover, or, I mean, no, fuck this, no, we only display it magically, and you have to kind of know it exists. So, anyway, what I did there is I did improve the contrast a bit, because if you look at the normal version, it's there, but it's hard to see. Always show it. That's important. We should always see this button. So we went from display none to display block. We should always display it. And I have a little encoding issue that I didn't fix. And that just makes sure that okay, it's just always there. That's all that did. Make keyboard focus visible, because we haven't tried to keyboard through this. So if you keyboard through it, these work. But other than that, I can't really see where I'm at. Sort of, but not really. So, there was an outline of none, which you should really never do. That's an anti-pattern. If you remove outline, you're basically saying users shouldn't be able to see where they are if they're keyboarding through a page. If you remove it, please make sure that there will be at least an equivalent clear replacement for it. Because you might want to make an outline that fits your design better. That's fine, as long as it remains available to users. So, because now I can just keyboard and, oh, look at that. Nice focus ring. See where I'm at. See, because this was actually a control. That wasn't really clear, but at least now we know it is. So, okay, and here's my remove. Okay, all my buttons, I can clearly see what's available to me in the interface. Excellent. Okay, and I've already gone into operable, and I've kind of gotten too fast, because we kind of might agree that it's a lot easier to see, apart from, we miss a bit of border because of the brightness of the projector, which we could also have improved, but at this point I haven't really checked to see if it's perceivable to people who can't see, so let's see what we get. If we have sound. This is voiceover. It's a screen
voiceover on Chrome. Presentation window. Presentation HTML content has keyboard focus.
This is...
You are currently on HTML content. To enter the web area,
yes,
press Control Option Present toolbar. You are presentation HTML content. Presentation HTML content. What needs to be done? Insertion at beginning of text. What needs to be done? Edit text name on. You are heavy right pointer under quotation mark ornament. Checkbox. You heavy right pointer under quotation mark ornament. Checkbox. List one item. Give presentation. Group. Checkbox. Give presentation. Button. 0. Items left. List 3 items. All. Link. Group. Link. All. Active. Link. Group. Link. Active. Completed. Link. Group. Link. What to do? Create voiceover off.
Okay, this is VoiceOver. It's a screen reader that blind and visually impaired people use to operate their computer. And so you can also use it to browse the web. So I've set it to slow, so it's easier to hear, but normally this is set a lot faster, and otherwise it takes forever. So, okay, we heard a bunch of stuff, but it didn't really clearly tell me what I was dealing with. There were a bunch of links, and there were some buttons, and a checkbox that just said checked, and I have no idea what was checked. So, clearly that's also going to need work. Add item edit button. Right, so what happened here? This is one of those bigger diffs, but basically all I did is add a button. And if you're supposed to edit one, you have to double click it, which is kind of tricky if you're on a tablet. So that's how they build it. You're supposed to double click it. Okay, fine. Alright, so I wanted a edit button. Right. So there it is. It's just a little Unicode button that displays there. So let's see how that gets read out.
VoiceOver on quick button. Heavy check pencil button.
Pencil.
You are currently on the button. To click this button, press Control Option. What needs to be done? It's VoiceOver off.
There's a bug there when I hit it. I fixed that later, but I didn't know it was a bug back then. So, operable. Use it to modify the to-do. Basically, add a JavaScript handler to the buttons, click, and get it to do the editing. So I need to add a new one here. Okay, at least reload, and now I should be able to click this. Editing mode. Alright, so now I can use the keyboard, magically use escape to get back out. I'll fix that later, but okay, now we can just also use the keyboard suddenly, because we can just tap to the button. Add, save and cancel changes. Basically just a bit of styling, adding more buttons to the interface. So all this did is... Oh no, I didn't want the inspector. So if I edit, I get these two nice buttons. So let's see what those say.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Checkmark button. List one item. Next button. You are currently on the button. Checkmark button. VoiceOver off.
Okay, so those are Unicode characters, so the screen reader will just say, it's whatever it knows this thing as. So it's checkmark button and a ballot X. Not really all that clear. I mean, you might get an idea of what they do, but it'd be kind of vague. So understandably, we want to clarify what are those controls for, what do they do. So, okay, we changed a bit of label styling. And added some padding, positioning, and there's a label for the toggle all, and a title for the page that says, oh yeah, I clarified it a bit. Basically just some labels. Alright. So didn't have to reload, but okay. So there's a label there, add new to do, which will now also be read out, and a user who comes to this thing for the first time doesn't know where it is. To-dos. I also changed the to two dash do's because my standard voiceover voice was set to South African and it says todos, and that just sounds Spanish. And so now it will say to-dos and okay, add new to-do. Example by groceries. I also clarified the placeholder because what needs to be done doesn't really tell me what I'm supposed to be. I mean, it gives me a vague idea that this is a to-do list, but okay, example by groceries, this is a clear example. In general, a placeholder, they have problems, but if you use them, just make sure that this example of what the data should be, like an email address, like foo@example.com, or a street name, or a zip code. Always make sure there's still a label, because as soon as you start typing, your example is gone, and especially if there are a lot of fields in the form, you might forget that quickly. So, we have a bit of clarification now. More control labeling. So I made a little class, it's called assistive, and basically just takes whatever you apply it to, positions it off screen so you can't see it, and then I edit a area label. So this is where we start using area. So I say, okay, the edit button now gets an area label, edit to do and delete to do. So we're going to find out what they did. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but this is a way we can use area to indicate different semantic value or descriptive value to these controls. And we can still otherwise use the little Unicode symbol. Now, for the save and cancel button, here I used a span that I position off screen in which I say, okay, save changes. And on the cancel button, I used area label and it says cancel changes. So let's see what effect that'll have. And by now I should be getting used to doing this. So,
VoiceOver on Chrome, present in the bunch, edit to do button.
Edit to do.
You are currently on the button. Delete to do button.
Awesome.
You are edit to do button. Fix on, insertion mark, save changes, check mark button. Cancel changes button. You are currently VoiceOver off.
So, even though I used the assistive span here and area label there, they both got read out. So this works in both cases. Because there are various browser bugs in how they work with area, you can have trade-offs where you say, okay, I will use an element and I will hide it off screen to contain this content. That has the issues that the element actually exists in the DOM. So if you're browsing your content with a screen browser, for instance, with a text browser, it will just show up because it's just a DOM node. So I changed the assistive class a bit, so it basically just returns to something that has no dimensions instead of hiding it off screen. And, oh right, I associate the task label with the checkbox. This is a really big change. If you have a form element, it is good practice to have a label for it, but then also to associate that label. So here's the input. This is a checkbox for the to-do, and here's a label for that basically is just the to-do text associated by the for attribute with the correct input. So the effect that has is that when I reload again and VoiceOver is that
VoiceOver on Chrome, presentation, HTML content, heading number 1, fix bug, unchecked, checkbox lists one item. VoiceOver off.
So first we just heard checkbox. Now it says fix bug, checkbox, unchecked. So now we know that that checkbox is associated with that description. And we still have the same interface. The information is also visually still available. It's just semantically better associated. So, rewrite the filter links into buttons. Right, because links are supposed to go places. And these are filters, and so they should really be buttons. Because they use the URL to determine what they're filtering on. So, what I ended up doing was just replace them by button elements, attach some handlers, and it's kind of a large div, so all I'm illustrating there is that if you're trying to use HTML semantics correctly, to really try to use links and buttons for their intended uses. So, what was that? So they still work. I say, okay, give me all my active ones, give me all my completed ones, or give me just all of them, but now they're buttons, so.
VoiceOver on Chrome, active button lists 3 items. All button, active button, completed button, VoiceOver off.
Cool, alright. Filter heading and visual grouping. That's a lot of text for just saying, okay, I want to visually show what these filter buttons are for, and now it just says filters next to them. Great. Didn't take a lot of work, and it tells us what those things are for. And it also tells it to a screen reader, okay, filters are coming up. Indicate the current active filter. Okay, so here we use area again to say, for this button which is currently active, we set either area press to false if it's not the current filter, and if it's true, we set the filter to true. And it doesn't do anything visually, but if I am using VoiceOver.
VoiceOver, edit, delete to do all, selected toggle button lists 3 items. You are currently active button, all, selected toggle button. VoiceOver off.
So now it's just select the toggle button, which indicates to me, okay, this is something I can toggle around. Great. It didn't take a lot of work. So we can now also get rid of some styles we had where there were styles attached to the current active button, and I can just use the area pressed attribute set to true to say, okay, this is my current active filter, which cleans up my CSS. It's a nice refactor. Understandable. Indicates the pressed blah, 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 blah. Right. A lot of words. All it says is I want a understandable label for these buttons because it says all active completed. No, I want to show all items, show only the active items, and show only the completed items. Because visually, we get a lot more context from seeing the entire page. And oh yeah, these are filters, it says so, and active, completed, that probably means that. To a non-visual user, this is now suddenly a lot clearer, and it didn't take us a lot of work. So attribute on there to know which filter we have currently.
A very quick question. Is show actually a good word for screen reading?
Sorry, show. Interesting point. I don't know if that really makes a difference. I mean, otherwise display and list could work. Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. I hadn't considered that. Let's see. What I also did is I set the area pressed for each button, even when they're not currently pressed. I set it to false, and that actually fixed a little glitch I had in the screen reader that fixed that they're all listed as toggle buttons, which they first were not.
VoiceOver. Show unelected show items. Selected toggle button. Show unelected items toggle button. Show only completed items toggle button. You are currently on toggle show unelected items toggle button. Show only completed items. Select show all items toggle button. VoiceOver off.
Okay, so it's now indicates them all as toggle buttons, and it will tell me which one is selected. Understandable. Mark to-do list as live region. This is really cool. So we have this list of to-dos, and I apply a filter. But non-visual, I don't see anything changing. I just know I've applied a filter. So what Area Live does, basically tells the assistive technology, this area is subject to change. If something changed, let me know. So that's really interesting, because it's just also a tiny change. But I should probably add another one. The life of a developer, right? So.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Presentation. Fix bug. Checkbox. Edit. Delete. Fix. Edit. Delete. Show items. Select. Show unelected items. Toggle button. Mark all as complete. Fix more bugs. Edit to do. Delete to do. Show all. VoiceOver on Chrome. Presentation window. Show all items. Show unelected items. Toggle button. Mark all. Show all items. Toggle button. VoiceOver on Chrome. Presentation with VoiceOver off.
That's new. That didn't happen last time. You were there, this didn't happen last time. So what happens, and you did hear it with the other one, when I said active, it only listed the one that was active, but it did start rereading whatever I marked as a live region. So basically all that does is mark regions of the DOM as subject to change, which is great when you're writing an Ajax-heavy application that does a lot of DOM manipulation. That's the way to tackle that sort of stuff and make it work for everybody. Okay, this is the last one I made. The last change I made, one thing I was thinking of was like made accessible by Job and put it there, but that's vanity and I won't. So, back to our presentation. If I can. Uh-oh. Okay, let's see if... Okay, so to recap, make it visible, usable, understandable, and flexible. And we saw that even just little contrast changes, just labeling things. It's not a lot of work, and it makes the web so much better. So you can say, well, why do we do this? Because, a lot of us have a disability. There's a fair amount of people here with glasses. Some of us, wrestle Damien Conway, and they can't use their arm the rest of the following day. Sometimes you're browsing the web and you just only have one hand available because you're reading a sandwich, And we all get older. I mean, I sometimes go to a website and it's just hard to see, and I wish I could just, I disabled Zoom and I can't see it. So you're also helping yourself and you're helping others. And it's about quality, because all of us, we write tests, we write documentation, we make sure our application is secure, we make sure our dependencies are up to date. We take pride in our work, we're Perl developers, cream of the crop. So this should just be a part of what we consider quality. Proper web development, making sure it works for people. And it's not a lot of work, as I showed. Well, the basics aren't, at least. And more accessibility means, in general, more better usability, happier users, more possible users, because, well, yeah, blind people, the blind people that use a website, they're just sitting in a dark room waiting for people to pay them a visit, And it's like, no, they like to browse the web as well. Old people with diminishing sight, they like to shop online. Are you guys all going to stop shopping online when you get older and your sight diminishes? No. We're all lazy. So, better accessibility in general can mean better profitability. So it also deals with, company risks. You can appeal to a wider amount of users. It's also about independence for users. And whatever we build is supposed to be used by people. If we do it right, why not make them as happy as you can? So this is Pratik Patel. This is a screenshot of a Twitter conversation where he said, hey Del, you're using a CAPTCHA. I can't read it because I'm blind, and so I can't log into your site. And Delcast says, yeah, but just have your friend solve the CAPTCHA for you, right? So you should have seen the response to that. So, yeah, because everybody has their cripple buddy that comes and helps them when they need something, No, that's not how it works. You want to be able to do that yourself. It's all about making stuff available to everybody. And also sometimes it's the law, because in America, for instance, there's Section 508, which says, okay, any governmental site has to follow the first version of the WCAG, because we're now in WCAG 2, but I'm digressing. The European, at least the European Union has, at least in the Netherlands, ratified a law that makes it, the law to make sure that especially web shops are accessible. Public websites, even private internets, they have to work. So otherwise, people can sue you if they can't use it because you didn't make it accessible. And it's our job, because we're web developers, at least some of us. And we develop for the web, so let's be web developers and not crap developers and just make good stuff. Does not like you give a damn, because hey, it's also in your own interests. We saw that with the whole bright projector. Some of your stuff is not as easy to use as it should have been. So, in general, use semantic HTML, anchors go to places, buttons perform actions. So, and use ARIA if you can't avoid it. If there's no better solution. So don't say, okay, I have a link and I give it a roll of button, because that means it's a button, right? No, because you still can't open it in a new tab and it doesn't really behave as a button. So you can use it to say, okay, this thing has semantics, like it being a toggle button that I can't communicate through its usual semantics. And always try to use, I keep repeating my point. As we saw, proper contrast, this is on website, and I told them a couple times, please fix this, but they didn't. Light text on white background. For some reason it's really hip, but it's also really hard to read. There's text up there that we can't see. It says light text on white background. Really, it does. Okay, so image alt text. We all use image alt text, right? Because it really helps. If you have an image that contains text, like says something about Perl Dancer, the best conference for Perl Dancer, then you say that same information that is conveyed in the image, you make represented in the alt, so that non-visual users also get that information. Or if it says something important like the dates are this and that, and these speakers have been announced. If there's relevant context in the image, so as I say here, Larry Wall gives a thumbs up, then you want to describe that because it's relevant to whatever you are displaying. If it's just some cloud, who cares? But if it's important to what you're trying to convey, yes. If it's just presentational, also use an alt. Just have the empty alt text. That tells the assistive technology, ignore this, this is not important. If you don't do that, if you have just no alt, then it'll say image, and usually the file name. And that's just, so that's the very simple rule. That's all you need to do for alt text. As I said earlier, form control labels. It's not a big deal, but it really tells people this is what this form does. In general, you should use labels in forms anyway, because it makes stuff easier to see, but also associate them correctly. As I said earlier, do that by ID and name. You can also wrap them, so wrap the input that belongs to the label in the label, but that's not as well supported by browsers and assistive technologies as this is, so please use the above ID and for. So, make sure it's navigable by keyboard, as I said, show the focus outline and follow the user focus. So, make sure that when something changes in your DOM, because you do Ajaxy stuff, like you insert a new DOM node, and there's focus relevance, like it's the next input that you go to because you made a choice. Your form changes, you show a new input. Make sure focus goes there and doesn't go somewhere else on the page, because to somebody who can't see and relies on being read out where they are and where their focus is, that's really confusing. Now you can influence focus by using the tab index attribute on a DOM node. So let's say you have a heading. Headings, like an H1, are by default not focusable. What you can do is you say, okay, I have a tab index of -1. That means you can use javascript.focus on it. You can't focus on it by keyboard, but you can say javascript.focus. If you give it a tab index of 0, it becomes part of the tab order, and it will show up in the correct order of the DOM. If you use a positive tab index, you're going to be in a world of pain, because if I have one thing and I change the tab index, I'm going to have to change all the ones that follow as well. So if I set 1 to 2, I have to say, okay, next one's 3, oh, the next one's 4, next one's 5. And that's just, no, you don't want to do that. Let the DOM show you what the page contains. Let the DOM define the structure. So, sectioning elements. Nav's main, aside, article, header, footer, section, and search. These came with HTML5. They're more modern sectioning elements, and they have native roles. So, nav has a role of navigation. Main has a role of main. Aside article that's complementary, and these all have roles that tell you, okay, instead of using a div, try to use a nav if it contains the menu. If it's your main content, use a main. If it's like the links on the side about something, like on a WordPress blog, use an aside, because it tells the assistive technology, okay, this is what's contained in this is how it's relevant to the rest of the page. And yeah. Headings, H1 to H6. Great, use them, please use them, because this tells you, this defines the document outline algorithm. So in general, you only have one heading level 1, because that tells you this is what this page is about. That's all it does. There's also heading level 2 to 6, but if you start with a 1, you don't repeat that 1. You can use as many 2s as you like, and as many 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s. But if you use them, don't go from 1 to 3 or from 1 to 4, just because visually they do what you like, because that just says, oh, suddenly I'm going from this to there in my structure, and that doesn't make any sense. If you have an H2 following an H1 and you don't like how it looks, style it with CSS. That's what CSS is for. So, skip links. Anyone use them? They're great because you don't have to show them to mouse users. You just hide them. As soon as people start focusing, you show them. And they're usually just skip the content, skip the menu, skip the footer. And they're very easy to make. And it really is a big... If you have a huge page, like you have a shopping cart with 12,000 nodes, you want to have some skip links so people can easily navigate them. Captchas. Captchas suck. So, which one's the cupcake, which one's the chihuahua? Find them all to be able to proceed. Because you're all guilty by default. I know, and you have to solve this stupid puzzle first. They're hard to see. There are alternatives that talk to you with usually synth voices that aren't that clear. There are math alternatives that say, okay, please solve this puzzle. And now you're making me think, you're making me do this work to prove I'm innocent. Like, no, don't make me be your spam protection. That makes me unhappy, and you don't want unhappy users, because I might go somewhere else. Don't disable viewport zoom. Now, I have this so often. I go to a mobile site, and I can't increase. There's a picture. The picture looks great. Probably doesn't have alt text, but it looks great. So I want to pinch zoom, and I can't because they disabled viewport zoom. Or there's tiny text, and I want to copy paste some, and I can't zoom in. And if you try copy pasting text, which is already hard enough on a cell phone, and then the font is really small, so please don't do this. Don't set maximum scale to 1. You're basically saying, okay, initial scale is whatever I render as, and then nobody can change it. and don't disable user scalable, because it basically means you're either too lazy to make your site responsive correctly, because if I zoom in, the layout should flow to accommodate my settings. But it also means that you're not respecting how I want to view your content. How much time do I have? 8 minutes. Yeah. Okay, I can do a very quick bit about progressive enhancement. It's the gold standard. It's the hippie bullshit of the web that we all want and don't get. Because it means that you start out with your HTML and you start with CSS and you add behavior with JavaScript. And that's lovely because it talks about separation of concerns. Because the HTML, that's the truth. That's no matter what, we're always going to be looking at HTML because that's what the browser renders. So, basically, you want to make your HTML semantically work. What am I trying to convey here? What is it about? Then you style it with CSS. And you make it nice and responsive. You make sure that, if I'm on a small cell phone, small viewport, my layout adapts. If I am on a desktop and I use browser zoom, my layout adapts because I use EM-based media queries. It doesn't mean you can't, JavaScript Angularify your reactive Electron UI. You can use JavaScript. You can use as much JavaScript as you want. I'm not saying you should, but you can, because you can just have the JavaScript hijack the DOM. As the HTML loads, JavaScript gets applied. Fine, you have some no JavaScript class on your HTML element. It gets removed by JavaScript as it gets loaded. You can style stuff based on whether the user is JavaScript or not. Hide or show stuff. That's all common patterns, and I won't go too much into this. But the core point is that if you want to do lots of interesting stuff with JavaScript, nothing's stopping you. Just start with links, because don't just say, okay, I have a button and I'm going to attach a on-click handler and that's how I'll go to other pages, because it semantically doesn't really work. So, use feature detection. So use JavaScript to say, okay, do I have local storage? Do I have these nice fancy new features? But we all know this. So when it comes to your denser backend application, and if I want to have an application by which I both have parts that I render or the entire page, I like to have small composable functions on the backend that either render a small part of my data or the entire page. And in the view, I do the same thing by just assembling small composable view snippets, either to transport asynchronously with JavaScript or to just render the entire page, depending on what abilities my user has. But I can't make any assumptions about what is currently viewing my page. You can do content negotiation, as Theo illustrated earlier, with the accept heading. So you can say, okay, they want HTML or JavaScript, and based on that I return something. So, but that's a whole bunch of information. There are some tools that you can use to test for good accessibility. DQ is an accessibility company to make X and Wave. There's the Chrome accessibility tools that you can just use to quickly check for good contrast. There's Tenon.io, one of my clients. They make a whole suite that integrates with your entire process, so you can use it with GitHub, with Grunt, with Jenkins, and it just analyzes all your stuff and says, okay, here's where things are wrong, here's where, this is the rule you are violating, here's how to fix it. There's a little contrast checker, the Pichello group. You give it 2 colors, foreground and background. It tells you, okay, contrast is good or not good, and then you have these little sliders you can adjust, and it shows you if it's still good or not. And you can easily find new colors that still work with your design, but are contrast friendly. Filament Group has some good tools, but this is all stuff you can look up online. There's a bunch of different assistive technologies. There's VoiceOver on the Mac, Windows has Narrator, which is actually not on this list, GNOME has Orca, NVDA is a free one for Windows. It's built by blind developers. I went through the code, it's full of C++ without spaces or new lines. There's Dragon, which is voice operating tooling that you can use. So you can browse the web, click button, click link, click, go here. There's Dolphin, which is another screen reader. There's JAWS, which is like 30,000 euros. Some good links. The Web Accessibility Initiative, the WCAG spec, the easier WCAG spec, and the WCAG, which is basically WCAG easier to understand, because it is dry. It's basically a bunch of rules. Books, apps for all. Hayden Pickering, great book, lots of good patterns, lots of stuff. Like I said, his latest book, Inclusive Design Patterns, just come out. I read it on the plane here. It is awesome, because I know you're all enthusiastic about this stuff now, so you all want to read it. Adaptive Web Design, blah, blah. Web for Everyone by Horton, very much hippie, but it tells you why are we doing this. Why, lots of personas, like think about these people using the web as well, and how we should make it work for them too. Norman Nielsen, Norman is from the Design of Everyday Things, great stuff, really good book on just overall design. Okay, that's that. Time 3 minutes for questions. That was it. Does anyone have any questions?
I was wondering, the button state is not read by a screen reader, or the button state.
A button state by default is just a button. It will be read out semantically as a button. So the question was, is a button state read out by the screen reader? As soon as you say, okay, this is area pressed, then it becomes a toggle button, because toggling is only visually and functionally. So to a visual user, you might want to indicate visually that it's a toggle button, so it has a little, little drop shadow, maybe just so it seems to move out a bit. There's a little check mark on it. But until you add area pressed to it, it will not be. It will just be a button. Anyone else? Riva.
In the grand scheme of things, how does, for example, meta-CPAN look to a person requiring accessibility?
I haven't gone through meta-CPAN, and I will gladly. You know what? Let me mirror this place, because I have like a minute, right? Yeah, this is.
That should be enough to evaluate it was.
Let's show it in tenor. If the internet works, please work internet. Okay, cool. .com? Thank you. Didn't feel right. 11 issues. Okay, so this turned to a tenor demo.
Larger.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So 11 issues. What do we got? An error. The image is missing an alt attribute. All right, it's an icon. Okay, that could just have an empty alt, really. What else? What else? More alt, more alt. Pages, no headings. Huh. That's kind of serious. Okay, but can be fixed. It even tells you where to fix. Recommended fix. Form element has no label. This is all stuff I've discussed, and it's true. See, it's true every single time. Link has no text inside it. Okay, yeah, it is. A link has an alt. What? Why would you? Link is no text. Link is no text. These are all kind of small things. No text, but there's a background image. What kind of links are this? This is, no, there's a whole bunch. Okay, so you get a whole JSON output that you can parse yourself and do fun stuff with. So, well, what else? Language of this patronage set. So, for those of you who saw my lightning talk at YAPC, language on the page is important, because, especially for assistive technologies. So, this shows you quite easily, okay, this is what I can fix. meta-CPAN isn't doing bad. I've seen a lot worse. This is really pretty good. So whoever wrote it, good on you. Where do you see that? Did it show that? Did I went by it, didn't. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that's bad. That's bad, that's really bad. Fix it. Okay, pull request. All right, well, that'll be all. Thanks for listening.